WARNO received an update today that added some cool units like sniper teams to the game, and in this video I will summarize all of the generic and other more specific changes that have been made to WARNO. Now in terms of map changes, Cyrus and Two Lakes have been reworked with many graphical improvements such as the water borders and light processing. Now besides graphical overhauls, the map themselves have been overhauled slightly as well by increasing urban density by reducing the size of gardens. And other than that, plateau ledges sometimes block the line of sight because of some trees at the plateau ledges, so these were removed to give a little bit more incentive to use the terrain to your advantage. The US M998 Avenger's stinger accuracy was set to 55% now, both in motion and static. Snipers were finally added to the game. All US, UK divisions, as well as the French 11th, the German 2nd Panzergrenadier, the Soviet 35th Guard and East German 4th Machschützen all received sniper teams. Now there will be two types of sniper rifles. One is bolt action and the other semi-automatic, which are designated as DMRs, designated marksman rifles. Bolt action rifles will be a dedicated sniper rifle with long range and accuracy but low rate of fire, as you can imagine, while the semi-auto rifle will be a good middle ground with less range and accuracy but better rate of fire. Now don't confuse sniper teams with other units that might have a scoped rifle. Sniper teams will be dedicated teams of 2, and these teams will have very good optics, and also have the new sniper trait, which grants them an accuracy bonus and a +1 stealth when static. Now a lot of changes also happen to recon units that have the GSR trait. GSR trait meaning units that get a +1 optics level when not moving. And they can also detect enemy targets that are outside of the usual visual range, but they need to stand still for this trait to activate. All units with the GSR trait are now limited to 6-man teams and cannot be transported by helicopters anymore. Now these changes were made for the Soviet Spetsnaz GRU, the East German Spezialaufklärer, American LRS, British SAS Patrol, West German Fernspeyer and the newly added French Dragon Paras, so go check them out since their weaponry was also slightly adjusted. Now they will still be able to forward deploy but not anymore in helicopters. There's also been some generic changes. Unit veterancy will now take more time and more combat experience before it levels up, giving more incentive to use command units to buff them. Light supply jeeps were increased from 12 to 20 availability per guard, and building HP was increased by 25%, which is an awesome change. Buildings were destroyed a bit too quickly, making urban warfare turn into an open field combat in the first 2 minutes, so let's see how that plays out in practice, and they might adjust this accordingly. Now high explosives got a buff too and have more AoE damage, and buffs were also made to the cluster and napalm bombers. MLRS and howitzers were slightly adjusted too, with MLRS fire rate being decreased by 15%, and the same is true for howitzer health, being decreased to 8. Now besides bombers, AT planes were also adjusted. The A-10's ECM was reduced to 15%, which hurts me in the heart, and Su-25 ECM was reduced even more, down to 5%. Now lastly, military police were finally added to all Soviet and East German divisions. Now if you didn't know what military police do, they basically recover or help recover your stressed units. So if you have units that are really panicked or just suppressed heavily, if they move back to the rear of the front line, and if there's military police there, they will help recover them faster and to put them back into action sooner. Now I'm glad to see some of these changes, especially the GSR recon units and adjustments to artillery and buff to HE and napalm bombers to hopefully make them viable again, because right now it feels like HE bombers and napalm are just thrown down, bags of confetti. But hopefully with this they'll be a bit more viable and a bit more, bit more dangerous to the field. Now the last thing that we still do not have is FOBs or forward operating bases. These will be constructions with a ton of supplies that you can use to either refill your supply trucks or simply to move units into its area of effect to heal, resupply, refit and whatnot. This still needed work, so it will be added a bit later during a hotfix. Eugen says that releasing this patch together with the FOBs would delay the update by a week or so we should expect it any time now. And this will just be a hotfix to add FOBs and perhaps some other balances. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how they implement the FOB back in WARNO. It was a really useful tool in all of the Wargame games, especially Wargame Red Dragon. One thing that people are already kind of worried about is how this will affect artillery abuse. Now one way they could definitely fix this is by making artillery use up more supplies. So if you do want to use Arty spam the entire time, your FOB is going to be drained quite rapidly. So that could be one way to balance it. So I'm not really worried too much about it. I just want to have a game where I don't have 25 supply trucks that are all empty and just waiting at the back of the line, because it kind of just felt like a waste of units. Perhaps also being able to sell empty transports, or empty supply trucks I should say, could also be a nice addition for later. But in general, this patch is a really good one, so I'm really looking forward to how this is going to affect gameplay. And with that said, I just want to thank all of you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.